Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Happy Wednesday. We're halfway there. And honestly, I am living on a prayer on the Wake Up America show. A bunch of technical challenges this morning. Hopefully everything is smoothed out and everything will go sailing okay today. Internet problems, be damned. We are streaming live right now. Joining us now in studio, one of our favorite guests we haven't seen in quite some time, since before Japan. Joining us now in studio, the lovely Edie Vogel. Give her a round of applause. Hi, Edie.
Good morning.
Nice to see you here today.
Welcome to the world of artificial intelligence. That's me.
Well, you're half right. Good morning, Edie. Nice to see you here.
See you too, Austin.
Let's give her a big round of applause. Glad to have Edie in here with us in studio today. Edie, it's a beautiful morning. The spring is strong.
It is, and we all know every morning we get up and we have that fine green mist on our cars. So I'm glad that I participate in the wash club I wash my car every day.
All right, let's get started with what's happening on the program today. At the top of the show today, Donald Trump's DeSantis diss backing Disney. That's right. Donald Trump has picked a side in the battle between Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and Walt Disney World over local control and woke policies. Donald Trump, has he gone woke? We'll talk about that with Edie at the top of the show. We'll be excited to hear her take on that one. At 7:18 this morning, I'm also looking forward to hearing from Edie on her thoughts on Fox News' settlement of the Dominion voter fraud case, the question of whether or not people at Fox News actually believed what they said about the election in 2020 being stolen in favor of Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about voter fraud and all those issues contained therein with Edie Vogel at 7:20. At 7:30 this morning, I think you're all going to be excited to see our old friend Spike Cohen, former vice presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party, is going to be joining us this morning to talk about revelations that the CEO of Bud Light is CIA. Did you know this? Actually, we found out, yes, that the CEO of Budweiser, whose woke policies have caused the company to lose over $5 billion in value. Edie drinks Voodoo Ranger. I don't think that's an Anheuser-Busch company, so we don't have to worry about it. Edie's not going to suddenly identify as a man. She doesn't drink Bud Light. We'll talk to Spike Cohen about that at 7:30 this morning. We're looking forward to hearing from Spike. At 8 o'clock this morning, Judge Andrew Napolitano will be here for Wacky Wednesday. We love having Judge on it on Wednesdays. He'll be talking to us a little bit about the question of, well, I guess he'll answer the question. Is the leaker in the Ukraine papers controversy a hero or a traitor? We'll hear from Judge Napolitano about that, and we'll talk a little bit about national security issues with him. The judge will answer that question at 8 a.m. Central Time this morning. At 8:30 a.m. today, everybody wants to be AP. Well, at least they want to do what I'm doing. Social media influencers and their influence on the American economy. Why work for somebody else when you can sit down and hang out with cool people like Edie Vogel in the morning and talk into microphones and, get heartburn and ulcers from all the stress from trying to run your own small business? Well, apparently more and more people are deciding to quit their jobs and take a chance on the influencer economy. We'll talk about that this morning at 8:30, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on this today at 573-319-1586. Again, the show is happy to hear from you. If you'd like to have your text read on air, send it in at 573-319-1586. All right, let's get this show on the road. The DeSantis diss. That's right. Donald Trump, candidate for president of the United States in 2024, goes for woke to trash Ron DeSantis. Donald Trump sides with Disney. I guess the only thing the Democrats enjoy watching more than Ron DeSantis' tiff with Disney is the Donald Trump show. In Tuesday's double feature, the former president decided to side with the woke Mickey Mouse to score points over the Florida governor. Donald Trump wrote on his social media site, Truth Social, Disney's next move will be the announcement that no more money will be invested in Florida because of the governor, Mr. Trump wrote. In fact, they could even announce a slow withdrawal or sale of certain properties or the whole thing. Watch. That would be a killer. In the meantime, this is also unnecessary, a political stunt. Got to say, Edie, he's not wrong about that. But what are your thoughts?
I kind of the deal with Disney and DeSantis, help me out here. Evidently, Disney had their own way of doing business with Florida.
Mm-hmm.
I'll speak of it in my terms, so
Sure.
they won't be legal jargon, like But
Right.
so then, and kind of expose the Disney Corporation for being, as we use the word, woke, and promoting the child stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and so then that, in my opinion, kind of died down. You didn't hear much more about it through the mainstream media, but DeSantis and Trump are constantly back and forth with each other. And remember when I sat here and I said I think that they're going to end up working together to try to get our country back on track. This is just,
Not sure about that one, but I was
recently, I will admit it. Now there's a way.
Seems there's a rift. Yeah. Well, so here's the thing. So this all started with Ron DeSantis versus Disney over Florida, is what they call the "Don't Say Gay" bill, right? Which, or really the anti-groomer bill, if you want to call it that, right? So, but while DeSantis was kind of distracted by a lot of this in February, Disney managed to claw back some of the authority that
they had. Yeah.
Right, that the legislation had tried to cancel, right? Because essentially, and I think, was it Todd, Minnesota, or somebody over in the live stream this morning said that it's kind of it was kind of like they were their own Vatican City in a sense, right? Their own little like world where
that's what it appeared to the average after they exposed themselves with the government, with Florida saying to them, we're going to cut all of this, pardon the pun, Mickey Mouse stuff out,
Right. So now, like, the latest news is that Disney is responding to their battle with DeSantis by having like the biggest, like, gayest conference there ever. But I mean, even when I was a kid in the 80s, when it was still a little more taboo to be out of the closet, Edie, like Disney was always for kids and gay people.
I
know you don't think that, but I mean, like, Snow White.
I wasn't paying any attention to it because it never. Yeah, you're going to laugh, but I never was interested in all those fairy tale stories. Don't ask me what I was, because I'm old and I can't really remember.
Well, I liked the fairy tales. I liked the stories, and I liked the movies because I grew up when I was a kid.
You grew up with that,
yeah. That was kind of their second golden age, if you will, of films, because there was Beauty and the Beast and there was Little Mermaid, and all of those movies were terrific. They're great kids movies, but it was also like, as you get older and you kind of like what sexuality is. If you're an adult and you're into Disney, you're probably gay.
Yeah, I would have to probably agree with that.
Because fantasy and sort of like living in fairy tale worlds and stuff like that, it's the same reason why so many, people who are gay go into musical theater. You know what I mean? Like, there's this desire for the fantastic. But I mean, here's the thing. Gay people put on the best shows.
That's right.
Think about, who do you think designed the costumes for ABBA in the 1970s and 80s? I mean, who do you think makes, the best musical theater productions that you see? I mean, it's not straight people who are doing that stuff.
No.
I mean, although there are a few, and I will say I did major in musical theater, and I love shows, and I really like Disney, but I mean, I'm the exception rather than the rule. So when I was a kid, I remember there were jokes and sort of what do you call it? Just sort of whispers and rumors about, like, there would be unofficial gay nights at Walt Disney World and stuff, where they would all go and hang out and have like a night where they would all go.
Now, I'm going to say that my generation, we wouldn't have even talked. We didn't even know what it was.
I know. Yes, you did. You didn't know what gay was? Come on.
I mean, when I referred to
Catholic.
I told you the story of the Irish nuns, that they would refer to us queer children, And that's because that's how they referred. And we didn't. We just thought the word was just, didn't hardly hear the word. We heard the word queer more than we did gay.
Okay. For me, queer was kind of like, it had become a pejorative when I was in elementary and middle school. It's like, because we had this game called Smear the Queer, and it was that you would just find one kid and you would beat him up, and that was all it was. But but here's the thing. I kind of feel like I grew up in the 80s and like early 90s. It was a good time, like when it came to like sexuality, because like people were coming out of the closet, and like there was like toleration towards homosexuals and things, but also like gay people. It wasn't like there was this out an open agenda of, we're going to have drag queen story out for your kids.
Yeah,
like it's become this issue now where what I believe is a minority of LGBT activists are
I do too.
are the loudest people in the room.
Yeah.
But it's also because they're the most grotesque, right? Transgender things, like those used to be the realm of pornography, and if you didn't engage in pornography, didn't watch pornography, you didn't see that kind of stuff. Now, unfortunately, here we are on, I would say, I'm on alternative media, but it's as close to like kind of a mainstream alternative media as you can get in terms of topics, guests, and things like that. And so we have to talk about it because it's an issue, right? It's affecting legislation in Florida. It's part of the presidential race.
It's in your
it's in your face.
It's in your face every day.
It is.
It doesn't matter where you are. I mean, we're debating it here in the Missouri legislature.
Yeah.
So,
I saw the LGBT activists were on front of the steps yesterday on the Capitol when I was over there testifying in support of a bill. But because of that, we have to have an opinion on it. And because we're talking about it in terms of a presidential election, I guess I would like to hear your thoughts on Donald Trump deciding to back Disney, because I'll be honest. I think there are two things are true here. One, that the reason why Donald Trump is backing Disney in this one is because it goes against DeSantis, not because he actually believes it. And two, that Donald Trump actually happens to be right, that if DeSantis pushes too far, he's going to kill the goose that lays the golden eggs there in Florida. Because what is the number one reason why people travel to Florida? Walt Disney World.
Spend money.
Yeah, to spend money at Walt Disney World and tourism. So you can't kill the goose that lays the golden egg.
And I would agree that probably Trump's mindset is the idea of the capitalism, the making of the money, because it is one of Florida's main, and he lives down there. He would want to be participatory in the betterment of that state because he lives there. And then he also realizes that the Florida, I don't think the major thing. Well, no, I think it would be. You're right. The entertainment of the big Disney corporation down there.
Yeah, nobody emerges from this looking good, I think, is the reality. Mr. DeSantis is, escalating this feud with a business that's, could alienate some moderate and independent voters, right? And that's the thing. Is that was who we lost in the last election, was the independent voters, and Trump actually lost his base. He got more votes from the minorities that we wouldn't have expected, right, Hispanics, African Americans, women, but he actually lost the white males that were his base. And I think it was because a lot of people felt like he didn't actually follow through with draining the swamp. He hired a lot of swampy people like John Bolton and others.
How's it going to get drained if he's working on it? I still think he's working on it.
He's trust the plan. All right, QAnon. All right. Yes, trust the plan.
I still listen to some of that stuff.
I know you do. All right, so let's move on to the next topic. We'll skip a commercial break today so we can have some fun. Fox News reaches a settlement in the defamation case with Dominion Voting Systems. So the lawsuit, they had settled the case. The company sought $1.6 billion in damages from Fox News over false claims that the cable news network had made in the wake of the 2020 election. The lawyer had settled the case for $787.5 million. God, that is a lot of money.
Jeez.
But the thing is that a lot of the stuff that came out showed that Edie, were you surprised when you heard that like a lot of the Fox News anchors who said that the election was stolen didn't actually believe it? Did that surprise you at all? That they were just saying that because they knew that's what you wanted to hear?
I still always thought that Fox, of all the not the mainstream media, but what's the word for their what they do, their own corporation, that they were the ones that you wanted to listen to because you thought you were getting the right information and more sincerity of heart from the people that were telling you that. Well, now they're coming out and saying that they never thought either. Is that what you're trying? Is that, I think I kind of have not followed it enough, except I'm just going to still tell you, I think the election was.
I know you do. I know, that's fine. And you and I, we've had lots of conversations about that.
But this lawsuit with the settlement, then if I'm interpreting it correctly, which I never do most of the time, but it looks like that help me out, Dominion
voting service machines.
That there could have been some corruption on their part.
There probably was here and there. I don't know that there's ever been a totally clean election, Edie. There's always some, malfeasance or fraud, or just what don't attribute to malice what can easily be attributed to.
I still think we just need to go back to paper ballots.
Yeah, no, I know. I agree.
We got to eliminate all this mail-in stuff. I mean,
I know, but I don't think we're going to do it.
I know.
Unfortunately,
I know.
I think what's going to happen is we're going to have to learn to play the game. And you're going to, if you can't beat them, join them. And like we said before, there have been instances of Republicans who, using the not absentee voting, but what do they call it, mail-in ballots, who have been, or what do they call it, ballot harvesting, have been able to use ballot harvesting successfully to win their elections. We're going to have to do it.
Yeah, I know.
Here's the thing: you got to go to church. You got to go to church, and you got to collect the ballots from the people who are going to vote for you, because otherwise the Democrats are going to do it.
And they are known for doing it. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I spoke to Kurt Schlichter one time on this program, he was talking about when the Republicans' red wave didn't come through. He said and he's a military guy. He said when he votes for Republicans, he says he doesn't want to hear excuses about how there's a rock in the road to prevent us from getting down the road. He wants to hear solutions about getting around that rock or getting that rock out of the road. And that's the reality, is that we can't, as Republicans, keep complaining about, stolen election,
Yeah,
we can't. It's not going to help, because I think it turns off the independents. The problem is, Edie, is that when it comes to elections, what animates people like you and I isn't what animates the general public.
No,
it isn't. We're not.
I don't even know.
We're not normal, Edie. We're not. We're not normies. I mean, there's a reason why people like myself and yourself are destined to be on talk shows and to run for office. Sometimes successfully, sometimes not. Right. At least you've won an election. I have never won. I didn't even win my election for student council when I was in.
I never won those either.
But you at least won an election in the 90s, right? Yeah. So you've experienced this. But I mean, there's a reason why people like you and I, people tune in to listen to our opinions and stuff like that, because we're not normal, right?
No, that's right.
Nobody wants to watch normal people sitting around on TV. That's not what you want to watch, right? You want to watch the freak show, right? And we're the freaks. And this is the Wake Up America show.
That's right.
But the point is my point is with this is that we make a mistake, I think, by looking at ourselves as the norm. And in winning elections, you have to find, I don't like to use the middle or centrists, but I would say normal people, right? You have to be able to kind of like find a message that resonates with the average voter. You know what I mean?
I think I do, but boy, finding that message to give to them is very difficult.
Oh, I know. Because you want to go out firing, brimstone with what you believe and fight and charge. But it's just, unfortunately, now everything's so watered down. Maybe
not only that, but the folks, and I've preached this all along too, is they don't pay attention. Their lives are so busy that by the time the event that makes everybody mad occurs, it's too late.
No, you're right. And people have really short memories, and they only are voting based on how they felt that day necessarily, right? But the thing is that independent voters outnumber Republicans by a huge majority, same as Democrats. The people who identify as members of a political party are shrinking, smaller and smaller.
The independent voter instead of classifying themselves as a Republican or a Democrat.
Right. They're now it's like, in terms of the independent voters, it's like the massive amount of people who actually vote, right? There's the total population.
Yes.
There's the very few amount of people who actually vote. Yes, and then there is Republicans and Democrats, and then the independents make up the largest chunk of people who actually vote. So they vote based on how they feel or what they think about a particular candidate at that particular time, based on the issues and situations at hand,
And that definitely is becoming more obvious.
Yep. Rare Camellia over in the live stream. Good morning, Camellia. She says Missouri has a good system: paper ballots, machine counting.
Yeah.
That's what you like, that system,
right?
Okay. Well,
I think of how to describe it. Where you do mark the ballot and you stick it in the machine, but it's not it. The other is auto. Oh, okay. The other one is the automated
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we can talk about that.
Which can be manipulated.
We might come back to that a little bit later. Conservatives push a wild conspiracy that Bud Light is being run by the CIA in secret woke warfare, says The Independent. I guess that means that they actually are. If the mainstream media says that they're not, that means they definitely are. Let's talk to my friend Spike Cohen about that. Edie, you and I have a little conversation with him, all right, when we get back on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Good morning to the Cantina Group. This is Elon Musk, the CEO of Twitter, and I just want to say thank you for watching the Wake Up America show. I've decided that Austin Peterson will be the new CEO of Twitter.com, effective immediately. First thing to do, though, is I've got to go and blast off into space.
There wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty.
I like shooting things, but whenever I can't shoot something, I like to cut things. My life isn't all about shooting and stabbing and cutting, though. Sometimes I have to do actual work, but when I work, I still like to have fun. And there's nothing less fun than trying to cut with a crappy knife. Thankfully, from the ancient sect of Christian knights, who also love cutting and stabbing, comes a new implement that has received my personal blessing, the Templar knife. Like the ancient sword of Excalibur, you don't choose a Templar knife, it chooses you. You just decide what kind you want on your website first, however, and then order it online, and then it chooses you. The Templar knife comes in a variety of shapes. As a man of culture and taste, I have decided I will never use a terrible knife again. And thanks to the inspiration provided by this excellent product, I have decided to launch a new crusade against anyone using less than superior knives. Join me, brothers and sisters, by visiting uppercuttactical.com/pages/Templar-knives. That's a lot of slashes. For that, you'll need a Templar knife. For 10% off, use code AP for Liberty and join me in a quest for glory.
They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
Templar knife. Get yours today. Fire. Hello, this is Barack Obama, and let me tell you why Austin Peterson stinks, and you should never pay attention to anything that he has to say. First of all, he's a libertarian, and we all know libertarians are idiots. They don't realize how important government is to everything that we do. I recently became aware that Austin has opened up a libertarian shop at apeforlibertyshop.com. Now, I'm asking you as a personal favor to me that you never ever visit apeforlibertyshop.com. With all of the great liberty merchandise there, the last thing that we need to do is to get people spreading this message around the country, because then they might start thinking that they don't need government. And that's the last thing that good Democrats like us want. So if you love democracy, like me, and hate freedom, then don't visit AP for Liberty Shop. Like I said, whatever you do, do not visit aporlibertyshop.com. I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
patriotism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
It is better to settle these matters in the courts than on the streets, and new laws are needed at every level. But law alone cannot make men see right.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. How are you feeling today? In a good mood on Wednesday? Yeah, we're almost there. Week is starting to head towards the end. I'm looking forward to the weekend. Joining me in studio this morning, the lovely Edie Vogel. Thanks for sticking around with us, Edie.
You're welcome.
Glad to have you here. If you're
Glad
enjoying,
to be here.
Yeah, if you're enjoying the show today, make sure you smash that like button over on YouTube. We're also growing a nice audience over on Rumble as well. So click like if you can, if you're signed in, to be able to help spread the message of economic freedom and personal liberty. All right, well, it's all a psyop to me, and I'm sure my next guest might agree. This headline over on The Independent says that conservatives are pushing a wild conspiracy theory that Bud Light is being run by the CIA in secret woke warfare. Joining us now to discuss that and the culture wars in light of the LGBT issues surrounding beer. What the hell? Joining us now is the former Libertarian Party's vice presidential candidate, Spike Cohen. Good morning, Spike. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on, Austin. It's good to see you, man.
Yeah, so Bud Light CEO is CIA. Your take?
Well, I will say prior to last night, when we saw this article come out, I would have said, it seems like a bit much. You know, maybe he's applied his terrible messaging that he learned in the CIA to this controversy, but I'm not sure it's a full-blown conspiracy. But now that I've seen multiple articles that are decrying the wild conspiracy theory, I now am almost certain that it's probably true now.
That's why we got Spike on the show today, to confirm our biases. But for a while,
Of conspiracy theories, yes.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, like, conspiracy theories are things that are unprovable. Conspiracy facts are things that are actually true. There have been conspiracies throughout history, but it does seem a little bit convenient that the head of a multinational corporation that is pushing what we might call woke policies, and we'll talk about, your take on that in just a couple minutes, so happens to be a former operative in one of the in the biggest international spy ring in the world. I mean, it's a little too convenient, wouldn't you say?
Well, I prior to this, I thought that this was more of an Occam's razor situation or I guess Hanlon's razor, where you can just attribute this to stupidity. That this was someone who learned terrible messaging and optics from one of the best organizations for terrible messaging and optics, which is the CIA and federal government in general. But now that the multiple corporate news agencies are letting us know that this is a terrible conspiracy theory and you're a bad person if you think it, I now increasingly think maybe there is some fire behind this smoke. But we shall certainly see.
Yeah, and I don't know. I'm not intimately familiar with your views on social issues, Spike. I know we're both, consider ourselves small L libertarians in terms of philosophy. So, I mean, I'm having trouble sort of squaring the circle with the problem of dealing with the fact that I want a tolerant society. I like a pluralist society. I want people to be able to live their true selves, their lives as they see fit, provided they harm no one else. And the sort of what I see is the stark reality that the actual policies that are starting to come out of the leftist LGBT community are increasingly targeting children, which I think should be immune from the kinds of the sort of like cultural pushes that adults should be able to freely engage in. So, I mean, not that if you're under 21 and drinking Bud Light, then maybe that's a problem in itself. But I mean, I guess I'd like to know sort of what do you think culturally of Bud Light's push here? I mean, bad marketing strategy, right? Duh. But I mean, why do you think that they're doing it? How do you feel about it?
Well, first and foremost, just to clear the air a little bit, I am a 17 years sober recovering drug addict. I started in my very early teens, and I started with alcohol and moved on very quickly from there. You name a drug, I've probably done it. And even still, even then I wouldn't have drank Bud Light. I'm not sure why we waited for this to be the Dylan Mulvaney to be the reason why we are boycotting Bud Light. I've tried to boycott Bud Light for, I believe, all of my 40 years of existence. But when it comes to these social issues, here's what I would say in general. I think we're seeing the politicization of what should be personal decisions. And what happens there is you then end up, instead of something in a consenting adult, a grown adult saying, I'm going to live this way, and whether you think it's great and you live that way yourself, or you think it's the most ridiculous thing you ever heard, they're doing it themselves and leaving you and your loved ones alone, then, that's not really a problem. The problem becomes when you have one side saying you are not allowed to live this way, and another side saying not only are we going to live this way, but you're not allowed to even voice your opinion against it. And so you end up with a literal, it is a war. It's a proxy war through government, but it is a war. And the way to fix it is, of course, with all things, with libertarianism. Allow people to live their lives on all sides of a subject and not try to force your way on others. And in return, they leave you alone as well. And that includes your children.
Well, as libertarians, we're sort of fighting a war on two fronts, Spike, because not only do we have to deal with government tyranny, but we also have to deal with the left agenda through corporations, the ESG agenda, environmental, social, and governance. Essentially, that if they can't accomplish what they want to accomplish for their agenda through standard government means, through standard democracy, then their goal is to take over corporations and to foist their leftist views on us through what they call conscious capitalism or what have you. And we as libertarians, believing very profoundly in private property, we face a sincere challenge there. I mean, if that's the Russians on one front, the communists coming through our government, then we're also having to fight the allies. If in this, I guess we're Hitler in this scenario, but it's a two-front war.
Yeah, I was going to say this is not. I don't like this analogy at all. I'm struggling to think of a two-front war where we're the good guys. But yeah, here's what I will say, because I agree. I think this is corporatism, right? This is. I think that in the days after the TARP bailouts, after the last fiscal meltdown that we had in 2008, you saw the Occupy Wall Street people and the Tea Party people were coming dangerously close to recognizing that they essentially had the same enemy. One side's fighting big corporations in bed with big government. The other side's fighting big government in bed with big corporations. It turns out you guys are fighting the same thing. And what we've seen since then is this push by government and its corporate media and corporate, sponsors to divide the public largely along social hobby horses like Dylan Mulvaney and Mr. Potato Head and all of these various things that really have nothing to do with most people's day-to-day lives, but they keep us fighting and distracted against one another. I mean, whether or not Bud Light puts someone on a can for a commemorative thing, but it's getting people worked up because it's tied to all of these other things that are happening right now, and that is a huge problem. And again, it's government interfering with the market.
You're just tuning in to the Wake Up America show. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're watching us on Rumble or Twitch or Facebook or YouTube or any of the platforms, make sure you smash that like button so that we can help spread the message of economic freedom and personal liberty to more people in their social feeds this morning. I'm joined right now by the former Libertarian vice presidential candidate, Spike Cohen, who's joining us right now to talk a little bit about the Bud Light controversy. I don't often agree with Matt Walsh. He's kind of like the rabid, theocratic social conservative over at the Daily Wire. But he did make a good point the other day when he was talking about Bud Light, and kind of no matter how you feel about it, when he talked about the market loss or the capitalization loss of Bud Light's stock. I think they lost $5 billion from this. And he says that this is a good example of a scalp in terms of the culture wars, in terms of impacting actual real world policy, fighting back against ESG. These are the kinds of tactics that, I think libertarians can even agree with, even if they don't agree with the message, to say, hey, listen, if, a corporation is doing something that we don't agree with, this is how we fight back. But Kid Rock shooting up a bunch of cans of Bud Light, doesn't harm anybody, and it sends the message. And if the company loses value, it's all voluntary, right? Doesn't violate the NAP. So no matter how we feel about it, these are the kinds of tactics that we're going to have to employ to fight back against corporate wokeness. Am I wrong?
100%. Yeah, no, listen, the best way to deal with something is to vote with your wallet, right? Like that, whatever side you fall on, if you're a libertarian, if you think that, that Dylan Mulvaney is the best thing since sliced bread, or if you think that Dylan Mulvaney is the singular embodiment of all that's evil, whatever, or it's somewhere along the spectrum of belief on that, you recognize that the best way to deal with something that you disagree with or find egregious is to not engage in it, is to not purchase it. I was one of the people that said, why did Kid Rock buy a bunch of Bud Light just to shoot it up? Didn't that purchase Anheuser-Busch products? But it turns out that it's probably likely that he already had several cases of Bud Light in his garage. But I will say that I think boycotts are the way to do it. I think you have multiple companies that have tried to recreate Nike's success with their Do Something campaign. And the problem is Nike's demographic that purchased their products, mostly young people, agreed with that. Everyone else that's been trying to do this, like Anheuser-Busch, their core base demographic doesn't agree with the things that they're doing. And so it backfires. They get a bunch of attention, but then they aren't selling as much product.
Spike, I saw this morning. I'm going to switch topics here if you don't mind. That you
For sure.
posted about 40 minutes ago. On this day, 30 years ago, the U.S. government murdered 82 men, women, and children. Why?
Yeah.
Do you want to answer that for us?
Sure, absolutely. The Janet Reno was worried that the federal agencies under the Department of Justice were facing a budget decrease. This was during the years of Newt Gingrich and the contract with America and budget decreases, and they needed a boogeyman, and so they created one. It was called the Branch Davidians, and on a very, very scant suspicion that they were modifying guns to make them who tried to escape, killing at least 82 men, women, and children as young as, I think 14 months old was the youngest one, and then spent the next several weeks slandering their names. That's what common sense gun control looks like.
It seems like every generation they need somebody to make an example out of, Spike. There's,
Yep.
there's the civil unrest that occurs. The government finds an excuse and an opportunity to continue to grow and to continue to move against us as citizens and to prevent us from being able to defend ourselves lawfully and legally. On the other side of the coin, though, I mean, a lot of people do say that what David Koresh was doing there was potentially child abuse. And so I wonder sometimes how we kind of how do we sort of square that circle there, Spike? I mean,
Sure.
those were just allegations. Everybody's innocent until proven guilty. But I mean, there are some people that we do need to have government to be able to protect because there are predators out there.
Sure, absolutely. And if those allegations were true, then he should have been tried for it. His victims shouldn't have been set on fire or machine gunned if they tried to escape their home, along with their families. We don't know for certain whether the allegations are true of child brides and pedophilia and so forth. If they were, everyone involved, every adult involved, should have been punished for it. But you don't set on fire entire families, including the victims. And that's the problem. We see this very often. When the government is given an inch, they will take your life or your children or everything that you love, because the goal is never to protect you. The goal of government is to control you. They will use the pretext of protecting you in order to get more power, but that's not what it's really about. And the case of the Branch Davidians proves that.
Spike, in terms of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, what should be the role of the United States?
At this point, trying to negotiate a peaceful settlement. I mean, we actually have a good thing. We have something we can hold over the head of Vladimir Putin, which is, I'm sure he would like to de-escalate this last several decades of tension that's been building up between the U.S. and Russia. Some would argue that's actually what led to the invasion of Ukraine in the first place. So, we are in a position to be able to say, listen, how about we get back to the days right after the Soviet Union disbanded and before the U.S. government sent the Harvard boys to destroy your economy and turn it into an oligarchy. Let's return back to an actual multipolar look at how things are in Europe. It starts with your leaving Ukraine and continues on with ending of sanctions, not just these sanctions, but the ones that have existed for years and decades, normalization of relations between our countries. I think there's a lot of negotiating we could be doing here that could end this war to begin with. But that's not happening because that doesn't make money for Raytheon and all of the other defense contractors.
Amen. Amen. One last question on a separate subject for you before we let you go, Spike. Do you see
Sure.
Elon Musk as a force for good in the world today?
I think Elon Musk is a perfect example of the fact that we're all complex creatures. There's good and bad. I will say this: the man at a massive loss, purchased a social media platform to make it largely free. There's still some issues to make it largely free for expression and freedom of speech, but also to expose what we had really suspected and known all along, which was that big corporations, big tech were colluding with, and sometimes being forced into colluding with not just the U.S. government, but multiple governments across the country. If nothing else, if he does nothing else, if he doesn't get us to Mars, if he does nothing else, then he at least did that, and we can thank him for it. I doubt he'll ever turn a profit on Twitter. I hope he does, but I doubt he ever will. So if nothing else, he's been a force for good on that.
Good to know. Hey, Spike, what have you been up to these days? And is there anything that you'd like to share with our listeners before we let you go?
Absolutely. I've been doing work with my organization, which is called You Are the Power. And without going into a long soliloquy about what we do, basically we help people. We find people that need help. We organize their communities around helping them. And we use it as an opening to get people into the liberty movement. If you'd like to find out more and be a part of it, go to youarethepower.net. We'd love to have you join us.
youarethepower.net. That's youarethepower.net. Spike Cohen, one of the leading voices in the fight for liberty in the United States today. Spike, thank you very much for your time today. We appreciate you, sir.
Thank you, Austin. Have a good morning, man.
Thank you as well. Did you like Spike Cohen? Send us a text, 573-319-1586. That's 573-319-1586. What do you think of Spike, Edie?
Well, for being 40 years old, he's on top of things.
Yeah, I liked his comment where he says that he had been a drug addict for a number of years, but that he tried every single drug there was in alcohol. But he never drank Bud Light. All right, we're going to go to a real quick commercial break. When we get back, what are we going to talk about, Edie?
It's up to you. You're the host.
I have no idea.
Throw it out there.
We'll talk about something before we get Judge Napolitano at 8 o'clock to talk about that Ukraine Papers leaker, whether he was a hero or a traitor. We'll hear from the judge at 8 o'clock. We'll be back after a brief commercial break on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
American conservatism is distinct, like America is distinct from the United Kingdom. American conservatism's roots comes out of the Wild West, out of pioneerism. The difference between American conservatives and European conservatives is that Americans are cowboys. We are that God, guns, gold, and girls. It's wild here. And we should stay that way. We shouldn't allow a European version of conservatism to come and infect us here. We like it wide open spaces here, deep in the heart of Texas and all that.
Hey there, it's your favorite Vice President Joe Biden. I wanted to talk to you today about the Wake Up America show, the best source for all your political news and commentary. But before I get started, let me just make sure I have all my notes in order. Okay, where was I? All right, the Wake Up America show. It's a great way to stay informed and make your voice heard. Boy, what was I saying again? Oh, right. The Wake Up America show. It's important that we all stay engaged and knowledgeable about what's going on in our country and, the thing. But hold on, where was I going with all this? Oh, yeah. The Wake Up America show. It's a fantastic resource. And if you really want to make a difference, man, you can sign up to be a monthly donor at wakeupAmericaShow.com/support. Now, where was I? Oh, that's right, the Wake Up America show. So if you want to stay woke and support a great cause, head on over to wakeupAmericaShow.com/support and sign up to be a monthly donor today. And if you're feeling generous, you can even give a donation in my name. Thanks for listening, and keep on keeping on, America. Come on, man.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Wow, we've definitely got some shout outs today. Thank you to Robbie Thurman, Quest Fanning, and Studio 3.14 for supporting this show. Nice to see you all here today. Appreciate very much those super chats to help us to spread the message of economic freedom and personal liberty. You keep supporting the show financially. We will continue to bring you some of the absolute best guests, interviews, and content in the liberty sphere. Remember, without people like you, we wouldn't be here today. Joining us in studio, the lovely Edie Vogel. She's also a supporter of the show. Good morning, Edie. How are you today?
Again.
Nice to see you.
I'm fine.
You liked our interview with Spike?
Like I said, that young man is on top of things.
Yeah, he was. So in 2020, he was the Libertarian Party's vice presidential candidate, and he's kind of emerged in what we call the liberty movement as a star because he's so intelligent and resourceful and sincere and devoted to the cause.
Oh, he's on the right track of his belief of freedom and liberty, and we could sure use a lot more of that.
I didn't realize that today was the anniversary of Waco. My buddy Robbie sent me a text message at 573-319-1586, and you can send us text messages there too to let me know that Spike had tweeted about this being the anniversary of Waco. And Spike was dead on that if there was abuse going on there, that Koresh should have been prosecuted, and they should have found a way to do it without murdering all those kids.
And see, both you and you were 10 years old, so you'd have no recollection of what occurred down there. And he's just reminded me of, I didn't realize that all those people, I didn't remember that they had they were all killed.
Yeah, I grew up. It's funny because Edie, my parents, I would say both of them, even my mother, they were what you would call conservatives, but I think that my parents, just didn't really know what libertarian was because they're not like traditional conservatives. Because my parents, they voted Republican, but they didn't trust cops. And so, and it wasn't necessarily, my dad got arrested a bunch when he was a kid just for being a greaser in the 50s and driving motorcycles and having ducktails in his hair. And, he actually they had a bunch of off-duty cops. And my dad told me this hilarious story about how they got in a fight because they went to the drive-in. And
this is all up in the area where they
in Northeast Kansas City.
Okay.
So, and then it like the High Boy or something like that. And some off-duty cops came over and started talking trash about their girls. And so my dad and his buddies beat up all these off-duty cops, and it was just and so whenever there was any it wasn't just cops. It's really just a distrust of authority and that my mom and dad always had. So I think that's kind of what made me a libertarian today.
That probably makes
because I just see the government. All government is just cops. IRS is tax cops, right? FBI is federal cops. Everything is cops, right? Not that you don't need police or that there aren't good police officers who are, serving and protecting. But for the most part, all government is just policing our behavior, right?
Yeah, it totally,
Yeah, the only thing that's not cops, I would say, is judges. But judges are judges, and they're still the government.
But judges are getting to be, they're so corrupt too.
Yeah, well, and always have been.
Yeah.
And always have been. And that's why, here's the thing. Government will inevitably be corrupt. That is why because it's made up of imperfect humans who are self-serving and seeking out their own, increasing their own, revenue at the rest of ours expense. But that's why it has to be limited. That's why it has to be small, because then the corruption is more obvious.
Yeah.
Because government is more transparent, and then it can't destroy all of our lives. But it's just gotten too big. The government has gotten too big.
Well, it's just its own organized crime syndicate. It's the mafia. It's it just.
Yeah. No, I just when it comes to things like the Oklahoma City bombing, and when it comes to things like Waco, the government, it in some sense reaps what it sows. Should he have bombed the Oklahoma City? No, that was not the way to go about things. Because again, you're killing innocent women and children, right? But at the end of the day, what if there had been a revolution that started after that, and then we had overthrown our corrupt government and put a new one in place? Then they would have looked at him like he was a hero, right?
Yeah.
If George Washington and Thomas Jefferson had failed, they would have been looked at as traitors, and we'd still be paying deference to the crown here in the United States. It's wild how things are perceived based on the historical.
No doubt about it. And it repeats.
And it repeats.
Yeah.
And it repeats. Have you ever heard of this little story called the Battle of Athens, the McMinn County War? Edie, I think you would really like this story. There was a movie about it. I think the Hallmark movie channel did a movie about it. I did a video the other day that went mega viral. It was this is the story of a bunch of World War II veterans who, when they returned from World War II, there was corruption going on in the local town with the sheriff and the state representative in McMinn County. What was happening was that they were stealing the elections. They were rigging elections. So these World War II veterans who had been hearing stories while they were overseas about all of the corruption that was going on, because the local officials, the police and the local officials, were harassing everybody in the town and extorting them and just stealing from them, and it was corrupt. So those World War II veterans, after an election went down, they actually stole the sheriff and the state reps stole the ballots and put them in the county jail to count them privately. The World War II veterans grabbed their guns and
Is this here in Missouri?
No, it happened in Tennessee.
In Tennessee, okay.
In 1946.
Okay.
So the year after they got back home from war, these World War II veterans got their guns and fired on the county jail and laid siege to the county jail and the courthouse until finally the sheriff and the officers all surrendered and turned over the ballots, and the veterans found out that they had won the election. And so they managed to install a new government there locally. And every year now they have, apparently,
That's right.
city.
That's right. Well, I don't think it'd be the courthouse, city hall,
Yeah. But how do you decide who's a hero and who's a traitor? Thomas Jefferson, David Koresh,
right.
what's the guy that, Timothy McVeigh? I don't know. Let's ask Judge Napolitano what he thinks about the Ukraine papers leaker.
Something
hero
odd
or
about
traitor.
that. Yeah, that's
a lot of weirdness going on with that story, isn't there, Edie? Yeah, well, let's hear from the judge about that. 5 minutes. We'll talk to Judge Napolitano when we get back on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Donald Trump and I approve this message. Believe me, Austin Peterson is the best. He's got the greatest Wake Up America show I've ever seen. Whenever I tune in the mornings and watch the live stream, let me tell you, he has got the absolute best content. I love his guests. It's just a total blast to watch, and I highly endorse and recommend the Wake Up America show. It's terrific, believe me.
Step right up, ladies and gents, to learn about the coolest president yet. He's not just any old prez, he's Calvin Coolidge, and boy oh boy is he different from the rest. He was quiet as a mouse, but don't you underestimate him. Grab a copy of Calvin the Coolest President and see for yourself. It's a children's book that'll make you smile and help your little ones learn about wealth. You can find it on Amazon Kindle or get your hands on a paperback at apforlibertyshop.com. So come on down and get yourself a copy of the book that's making waves all around town. You won't regret it, so get ready to be floored, because Calvin Coolidge, well, folks, he really scored.
I'm a public defender.
I am a public defender.
I'm proud to be a public defender.
80% of Americans accused of a crime will get appointed a public defender.
Everybody from a speeding ticket to capital murder.
For every dollar we spend on public defenders, we spend $3 on prosecutors.
Public defenders have to do pretty much everything on their own.
Social workers, counselors.
Investigating is another piece of it.
The average public defender holds 300 cases annually.
You never feel like there's enough time.
Public defenders have health issues all the time.
A lot of people give up and say, I can't do this work anymore.
Gideon's Promise trains, mentors, and supports public defenders.
There are a lot of people who say that they would not still be public defenders, but for Gideon's Promise.
It's fueled me to continue on in this fight.
Gideon's Promise has changed the face of public defense.
People see us as troublemakers.
Good trouble only.
We don't make it easy. It should not be easy to take away someone's liberty.
Ever hear the one about the frog? Put a frog in a pot of boiling water and it'll jump right out.
Here's my resume again.
But put a frog in a pot of cool water and slowly heat it up and that frog will boil. It's a lie. But as a metaphor for us and all that we go through as veterans,
the real-world experience.
it's a story that rings true. We make excuses for how we feel. We push everything down. We tell ourselves the lie that it's easier to stay in that boiling water, to disconnect. And some days, maybe it is. But you've never been interested in easy. Make no mistake, reaching out is hard. Do it anyway. You're not alone. You've got this. You are not a frog.
Find resources at va.gov/reach.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson, and you're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupamericashow.com. Edie Vogel still joining us here in studio. Hi, Edie. Thanks for sticking around.
I'm nosing in my...
Appreciate it. Your favorite Catholic commentator joining us here in just a moment.
Yes, I have a lot of respect for the judge.
I know, and he's a fantastic guest, and we like to call this big brain time. So
that's for sure.
Time to put on your thinking caps. Hope you've had your coffee and maybe a little bit of breakfast as well. Well, we've been talking this morning about how history judges people who are heroes or traitors, and what a perfect guest to discuss this topic is what I would call my greatest hero, Judge Andrew Napolitano, who's joining us right now. History will judge you, Judge, and will judge you as a hero in my mind. How are you, sir?
Well, I'm happy. I'm thrilled to be with you and your colleague, and thank you very much for the kind words, Austin. Every time you introduce me, I get goosebumps because my brain takes me back to Fox News circa 2012, when we were in at the crack of dawn getting ready to move the dial in the direction of liberty 8 hours later.
Of course, I'll never forget the hours that I spent on the subway before you and I had ever met, reading your books, highlighting them, underlining them, writing questions to myself for questions that I would ask you if I'd ever met you. Finally, now that you and I get to talk every Wednesday morning, I get to ask you all those questions that I put as notes in your book. And we get to discuss current events. I look forward to talking about your and my former employer here in just a few minutes on that Dominion lawsuit. But Judge, we've been talking about the difference between heroes and traitors this morning. That's been the theme of the show. And in regards to the leaker of the Ukraine papers, do you deem this gentleman who has leaked national security secrets to be a hero or a traitor?
Well, I think he's a hero in the Daniel Ellsberg, Edward Snowden, Bradley Manning, Julian Assange category, a human being entrusted with or the recipient of information of profound public interest, information showing government criminal behavior, information that people have a right to know about before they decide whether or not the government is worthy of belief, and willing to sacrifice life, liberty, and property in order to further the goal of democracy and transparency. So I think that Teixeira, if he is indeed the leaker of this information, is in that category of hero. I mean, to the government, there is no right or wrong. There is no lawful or unlawful. It's just what side are you on? If you're on our side and you're Victoria Nuland, you can leak the secrets. If you're on our side and you're Lloyd Austin, the Secretary of State of Defense, you can lie under oath. Don't worry, it's all for the good. It's all for the government. It's all for the war. If you're on the other side and you leak secrets, even truthful ones, tell the truth, the government will come down on you like a ton of bricks. Our side in my scenario is the side of government and war. The other side in my scenario is the side of the truth.
Judge, what did these papers reveal that has the government so concerned?
Its own belief that the Ukrainian war is not winnable, its own conclusion that Ukraine air defenses have been so degraded that by late May or early June, they will be non-existent. What embarrasses the government is the revelations of its spying on allies, Israel, Egypt, South Korea. Everybody in this who follows this stuff knows that the government does it. But here is manifest proof that the government does it. So Tony Blinken and company have a lot of fence mending to do. So it's basically the government was embarrassed by the truth. I say the American public should welcome the truth and embrace the truth teller. We won't get to embrace him for 20 or 30 years when he gets out of jail.
You're just tuning into the Wake Up America show. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. Make sure that you click that like button on whichever social network you're joining us on this morning. It's nice to see such a big audience over on Rumble this morning. Glad to have you here. If you're signed in and able to do so, please click like so we can continue to grow our network over there and spread the message of good people like Judge Napolitano, who's joining us right now. He's the host of the Judging Freedom podcast, which you can download on any of your podcasting devices. Judge, in regards to what the end game is here, what is really the best case scenario that people like yourself or myself, people who are libertarians who love freedom, what's the best case scenario? Because I don't want to see Putin win, but then I'm not a fan of Zelensky, the gangster, either. I mean, what's the best that people like you or I could hope for?
I suppose a ceasefire, Putin determining that in his view, the Russian-speaking and Russian cultural parts of Ukraine have been reunited to Russia. I mean, maybe that's a little fanciful, but that's probably the best end game that we can expect. Certainly, no one wants to see the beautiful city of Kyiv destroyed, and no one wants to see the entire Ukraine government coming under Putin's thumb. And I'm not saying this as an apologist for Putin at all. But if you look at the history is that the Soviet Union collapsed peacefully when George H.W. Bush and Jim Baker told Mikhail Gorbachev, don't worry, NATO, which has armaments aimed at Moscow, will not move 1 inch closer to Moscow. Well, it's now hundreds of miles closer to Moscow. And in fact, Finland was just added, which has an 800-mile common border with Russia. These NATO countries have easy access to Western armaments aimed at Moscow. So can you imagine if the Russians took over Canada and aimed these weapons at Detroit and Chicago, or if the Chinese took over Mexico and aimed these weapons at Dallas or Phoenix? This is how the American government would react, similar to the way Putin has reacted. Ukraine was a satellite of the Soviet Union. Ukraine was a country favorable to the Soviet Union. Ukraine had a popular election in which the president of Ukraine was elected, closely allied to Putin, and then Victoria Nuland and her buddies in the State Department and the CIA fomented a coup and chased him back to Moscow, installed a puppet regime, which was succeeded by Vladimir Zelensky. The American CIA knows that Zelensky and company have stolen over 400 million in cash since February of 22. Have we asked for any of that back? No. Have we denied that we know they've stolen it? No. I mean, this is just absurd what's going on there. So the best case scenario is for us to stop giving them money, get American troops out of there, and negotiate for a ceasefire. Vladimir Putin says he's willing to negotiate. Joe Biden says he's not. What the heck is business is it of the United States if Putin wants to negotiate with Zelensky? American exceptionalism run amok.
I couldn't agree with you more, Judge. But we're going to go from big brain now to galaxy brain, and I want to dwell in the realm of the philosophical, and talk to you a little bit about the post World War II New World Order that was created, global hegemony that the United States engaged in. And I think that you understand the reasons why. Maybe our audience does as well if they have a good grasp of history here. But the reason that the United States engages in what you and I might call a hypocritical double standard is that they were sick and tired of getting drawn into European conflicts, and that after World War II, that the United States decided that they would that we would become the policemen of the world. At least that's the argument for the reason for why we are, the global international empire that we are, such as we are. But I guess my question to you is, Judge, is that finally, let's say you found yourself in that time period, right? Harry Truman is the president of the United States, and it's now time to set up a new world order. Germany is in ruins. Tokyo is still on fire. Hiroshima is still dealing with radioactive fallout. Now you're tasked with creating a new world order. I think even libertarians would agree that the punitive actions taken by the Treaty of Versailles after World War I is what deliberately led to the causes for World War II, the decimation of the German economy, the destruction of the Reichsmark, and the rise of fascist ideologies. But after World War II, the United States took a different approach. They said, hey, we're not going to get drawn into these conflicts anymore. We're going to play the policeman, the role of policeman of the world. And we're also going to take American taxpayer dollars, rebuild Japan in our own image, and Germany, at least, portions of Germany, in our own capitalist image, to great success in if you look at in terms of Japan, right? And in preventing another world war. There hasn't been another world war since. There hasn't been a need to use another nuclear bomb since. So, knowing that, those situations are what they are, what do you do as president of the United States? You're in Harry Truman's place. The bomb's already been dropped, perhaps. They say you were pressured into doing it for whatever reason or another, Judge. What kind of post-world order do you create as a libertarian president that doesn't sow the seeds of another global conflict like the Treaty of Versailles did?
Well, I'll admit that the temptations that were on Truman to do what he did must have been extraordinary, and he was listening to people like George Kennan and George Marshall, who were globalists and who had these ideas of American empire put into them. George Marshall at Virginia Military Institute, George Kennan at my alma mater, Princeton. But they both were of the view that the United States of America can be a force for good, a force for democracy, and a force for capitalism. And Truman fell for that. Listen, I'm hardly a fan of Harry Truman. You've heard me call him the worst mass murderer in history if you are talking about the number of deaths per second, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But one of the other horrible things he did was to sign the law that created the CIA in 1947 and begin the American national security state, which, even though it had clauses in there prohibiting the CIA from doing anything in the U.S. other than administrative, and from getting involved in any way in law enforcement, those clauses have totally been abandoned. They're still in the statute, of course, but the CIA is now the biggest surveillance apparatus in the country, and a private army at the disposal of the President of the United States. The national security state of the United States and the concept of American exceptionalism does not spread democracy and capitalism, or freedom. It spreads violence and death, and it wastes American blood and American tax dollars, and it mortgages the future. These arguments are irrefutable. This is not an opinion. This is a statement of fact.
But Judge, after World War II was the right decision to rebuild those countries that we had destroyed rather than to punish them. Libertarians would say perhaps, non-intervention, that, we should, taxation being theft, we shouldn't be, spending any money at all to rebuild Japan. But it was one of the great success stories of world history. And, should we have allowed the Soviets to just control and tyrannize the people of Germany, even though Germany had been our enemy? Was it the right approach to rebuild those countries?
Vladimir Putin the other day said the United States still occupies Germany. He said it with a little bit of tongue in cheek, because can you imagine if one of our pipelines had been destroyed, but somebody said to Joe Biden, "Oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It'll be repaired." Just as Joe Biden told the chancellor of Germany, "Oh, we destroyed your pipeline, but don't worry about it. It'll be repaired. We'll give you the cash for it. We just had to make a point." American hegemony and American control, though you could argue accelerated the development of capitalism in Japan. And I know you're very familiar with and partial to Japan because of your 2 weeks you just spent there. And in Germany, on paper, has been a horrific destroyer of freedom and mortgaging the future of the American people. So the libertarian view after World War II is to get the heck out of Japan and get the heck out of Germany. Don't punish them, leave them alone. Obviously, what Woodrow Wilson did after World War I. Sometimes I think Wilson was absolutely the worst president, but Lincoln, it's hard to knock him off that pedestal or pull him out of that hole. But Wilson is a close second. The Treaty of Versailles, its raping of Germany, the blockade that continued to prevent food and medicine being brought to Germany in the months that the Treaty of Versailles was being negotiating it without any German input, telling the Germans sign or starve, punishing them to the extent that it produced the Nazis and Hitler, was just the worst blind spot in American foreign policy history, worse even than George W. Bush's idiotic and insane invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq.
Judge, I could talk about this for hours. I love this kind of conversation, but it might be a little too heady for people who are just enjoying their breakfast. I'm going
I
to
know.
bring
I don't want you to get upset over your scrambled eggs.
No, I don't. I don't know how much we can influence people to have a water cooler discussion about the end of World War I or World War II. I don't know if the Treaty of Versailles is going to come up very often, the water cooler. So let's bring it back to earth, Judge, and get our feet on the ground and talk about something that people are discussing today, which is the question of our former employer, yours and mine, Fox News, paying out a $787 million settlement to Dominion voting machines over allegations that there were falsehoods being told about the 2020 election. What's your big picture take on this, Judge?
My big picture take is that Fox wanted to cut its losses, and its losses have been severe in terms of reputation. The information that came out in discovery, that's the exchange of documents and the examination of witnesses before the trial, caused the judge in this case to rule as a matter of law that what Fox hosts, your and my former colleagues, in my case, still my friends, but perhaps in yours as well, what they said was false. That meant as a matter of law, it was false. That meant that the jury didn't have to decide it was false. That meant that half of Dominion's case was proven before the trial even started. This is a humiliating blow for Fox. As for the cash, I mean, Fox's last report shows $4 billion in cash, so they're going to part with nearly a third of it. They can afford that. However, this is vastly more in cash than Dominion is worth. It is vastly more in cash than the hedge fund that just bought 76% of Dominion paid for that 76%. It is vastly more in cash than damages that Dominion was able to show. So it is clear that this is a punitive settlement intended by the numbers that they reached in Dominion's mind to punish Fox, in Fox's mind to cut its losses so that Rupert Murdoch and Sean Hannity and Laura Ingraham and Tucker Carlson and Suzanne Scott and Lou Dobbs and Jeanine Pirro do not have to take the witness stand and be humiliated.
Judge, if you don't mind, I'd like to switch subjects here to something related to the battle between Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis. Have you been following the scuffle between the two of them, for the presidential nomination, of course, but also in regards to Disney, Walt Disney World? And did you happen to see the headline yesterday about Donald Trump siding with Disney in Florida?
I did, and I do follow that, as you know, because you and I have discussed this. I've written on Disney, and I have two sides of me on it. You know, Disney came about by one of the worst acts of corporatism, a symbiotic relationship between the government and a favored a commercial entity. On the other hand, the legislature of Florida, which seems unusually and uniquely subservient to the political whims of the governor, is punishing Disney because of the political opinions of its employees, which is reprehensible, contrary to the First Amendment and contrary to what's called the Contracts Clause of the Constitution, which prohibits the states from interfering with bona fide contracts that have been agreed to by private entities.
It's going to be an interesting presidential race, Judge, but I am a little bit concerned that it doesn't look as if we're going to have any candidate running who defends free markets. I was reading a story in Politico the other day about the Heritage Foundation apparently starting to make the turn towards more, economically populist views, which, tend to be anti-capitalist, and the Republican Party, which, at least paid lip service to free markets up the Reagan era up until perhaps the Trump era, now doesn't even want to pay lip service to free markets. Now it seems as if the Republican right is now completely and totally turned against free markets. It seems, I mean, I know you always like to talk about how there's very little choice or difference between Republicans and Democrats, but I mean, I like to say that now that the difference between Republicans and Democrats is that with Democrats it's Elizabeth Warren, with Republicans it's Elizabeth Warren, but they go to church on Sunday. I mean, their social views are really the only thing that divides them. Would you agree?
I agree. I mean, this is basically about control of government. This is not about lessening government. Neither of the political parties is for lessening the government influence in our lives. Neither of them stands for the first principles that you and I stand for, which is the primacy of the individual, the sanctity of contracts, the ability to engage in free market, meaning free from government interference or regulation, commercial transactions. They stand for none of it. So none of this is a surprise. I agree with Governor DeSantis and former President Trump on Ukraine. None of the other Republicans do. None of the Democrats do. The Republican base doesn't seem to agree with that, but that is hardly a reason, just that alone, for supporting a political candidate. These are Tweedledee and Tweedledum. It's a Democrat version of big government. And the Democrats are more honest about their wish for big government and their intent to control, and a Republican version of big government, and they are less honest about the control that they want. There are some bright spots around. Congressman Biggs of Arizona, Congressman Massey of Kentucky, Senator Paul of Kentucky, but these are vastly outnumbered by their colleagues in Congress, and often are lone wolves crying in the wilderness.
They certainly are, Judge, and we back them at any chance that we get. I think that the pandemic really, showed more than anything who the true heroes were in Congress that stood up for our rights when everybody was terrified at the beginning of 2020. Only a very few people actually stood up for our rights and for our liberties, and I think that we should remember that. Judge, you have got an absolutely terrific show. And I mean, we've got over 100 some odd people watching us live right now, which is really good numbers for us. But when I see the amount of people who watch Judging Freedom on a daily basis, I'm just blown away. Everybody wants to hear your point of view. And your show, Judging Freedom, is just an absolute runaway success. Can we get a little sneak preview of what you're going to be talking about in your next interview?
So at 11 o'clock this morning Eastern, I have Phil Giraldi. He's the CIA former CIA senior official who told George W. Bush Saddam Hussein has no weapons of mass destruction. Bush threw him out of the Oval Office. Phil will talk to us about the nature of secrecy, the primacy of truth, and how this kind of information can get in the hands of a 21-year-old. And at 4:30, the great Scott Ritter, of course, who will tell us his version of who's a hero and who's a goat, and how much longer the Ukraine war will go on, and what off-ramp, if any, the Americans have, and it doesn't seem that they have any. So Giraldi at 11, Ritter at 4:30, both times Eastern.
Download the Judging Freedom podcast on any of your mobile devices. Judge Andrew Napolitano, good friend, and judged a hero by those who believe in freedom here in the United States. Judge, it's always a pleasure. I wish it could go on for hours. Thank you so much for your time, sir, and we look
Same
forward
here.
to seeing
Thank you.
next
Look
week.
forward to next Wednesday already. All the best, Austin.
Have a good one, Judge. Thank you very much. What did you think of Judge Andrew Napolitano? Send us a text, 573-319-1586. So, Edie, before we go to a real quick commercial break, I will ask you, in terms of the post-war, if you were president of the United States after World War II, do you learn the lessons from the Treaty of Versailles, and do you rebuild? Do you rebuild Japan and Germany after World War II, or do you leave them alone, or do you punish them? What do you do?
I don't think we at the time had any other choice.
Mm-hmm.
So, but in hindsight now, maybe not. You know,
That's interesting. That's interesting. Well, that's a good one. So we'd love to hear from you on that one. Send us a text again at 573-319-1586. Let's give a round of applause to Studio 314 for your shout out there and your super chat. Another $5 for the judge. We appreciate that very much. Again, all of your money goes to a good cause to help us to produce more interviews just like that. So your super chats really do support the show, and we're super grateful for you for that. Also, really briefly, before I go to a commercial break, I don't think anybody's noticed this just yet, but we have a new item in the AP for Liberty shop store. So you probably haven't heard of this guy before, but he's kind of like a hero in libertarian circles. This is my latest 3D printed creation, which is a bust of Ludwig von Mises. And I know, you're like, who's Ludwig von Mises? Well, Ludwig von Mises was a big influence on Ronald Reagan and his economic policies. He was an Austrian economist, and he actually, because he's Jewish, he fled the Nazis, fled Austria to come to the United States, and helped to found the Austrian School of Economics, free market economics. And I know a lot of people who are watching the show this morning probably know who Ludwig von Mises is. This is now available in the shop. So there's going to be two versions of it. This is the big version, and I'm going to make a smaller version. I only have the big version available right now. So if you're interested in getting your own Ludwig von Mises gold bust, head over to apforlibertyshop.com. You can head over to apforlibertyshop.com. Todd in Minnesota is saying, Austin, it says that it's sold out. Guess what? I screwed up. So I'm going to go put them in stock in the store right now. You can get a Ludwig von Mises bust. I'm going over to the shop. I'm going to set it to in stock during the commercial break. So go get yours during the commercial break. We only have a limited number right now. So you want to get the ones that we have right now, go get them real quick before they get snatched up. And I will make a smaller version sometime in the next week. We will be back with more Edie Vogel on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
American conservatism is distinct, like America is distinct from the United Kingdom. American conservatism's roots comes out of the Wild West, out of pioneerism. The difference between American conservatives and European conservatives is that Americans are cowboys. We are that God, guns, gold, and girls. It's wild here, and we should stay that way. We shouldn't allow a European version of conservatism to come and infect us here. We like it wide open spaces here, deep in the heart of Texas and all that.
Hey there, it's your favorite Vice President Joe Biden. I wanted to talk to you today about the Wake Up America show, the best source for all your political news and commentary. But before I get started, let me just make sure I have all my notes in order. Okay, where was I? All right, the Wake Up America show. It's a great way to stay informed and make your voice heard. Boy, what was I saying again? Oh, right. The Wake Up America show. It's important that we all stay engaged and knowledgeable about what's going on in our country and, the thing. But hold on, where was I going with all this? Oh, yeah. The Wake Up America show. It's a fantastic resource. And if you really want to make a difference, man, you can sign up to be a monthly donor at wakeupAmericaShow.com/support. Now, where was I? Oh, that's right, the Wake Up America show. So if you want to stay woke and support a great cause, head on over to wakeupAmericaShow.com/support and sign up to be a monthly donor today. And if you're feeling generous, you can even give a donation in my name. Thanks for listening, and keep on keeping on, America. Come on, man.
Machine guns and a proper keychain. Number 3. Bloody hell! This commercial is running too long. Gotta run. Bye now. Don't forget to visit.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericashow.com. The lovely Edie Vogel joining us in studio. Hi, Edie.
Morning again.
Good morning. I guess
we have been enlightened a lot this morning.
We have. It's been very, very big brain today.
Yes.
Yeah. Nelson65 over on Rumble this morning says, Edie, I voted for you. I wish you had won. I guess he's a local friend, so thanks, Nelson. Appreciate that, Nelson. Thank you very much. I wish Edie had won as well.
Well, it's the way kind of just...
It was a tough race.
Yeah.
It was a tough race. It's what it is.
People need to get out.
You got to get out and vote.
Yeah.
A lot of people didn't vote. Thank you very much for tuning in the show today. It's awesome to see so many people watching us live, especially over on Rumble. We've got a nice big audience on YouTube as well. We've for a decent amount of time today, we've had over 100 people watching us live, which is great. We're continuing to grow, and we're grateful to you. If you'd like to support the show for free, you can do so by joining us as a monthly member. You can also visit apforlibertyshop.com. People were complaining, hey, I wanted to buy the Mises bust, but it was out of stock. Well, that's because, sometimes I make mistakes. So guess what? It's up on the shop now. You can get your Ludwig von Mises bust over at apforlibertyshop.com. Isn't that pretty? I think it's actually kind of nice. Really good looking. Put that up on your shelf. If it's a little bit too pricey for you, just so you know, I will have a A smaller version coming soon. I'm not sure when, but yeah, but you can get like a nice big one available now at apforlibertyshop.com. What else did I want to say? So, social media influencers. So, Edie, you and I met in Radio World, old school world. And that was when I was the host of the KWOS morning show. And it, there's nothing really more old school
than
radio.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. Podcasting is kind of what we're doing right now. It is the new radio in a sense.
As I was chatting with you during the break, it totally makes sense to me that the people that are functioning in the world today or here in our little area, they have the ability to listen to the podcasting at their pleasure. It's not a matter of them turning on the dial or flipping the remote control at a certain time that it's aired live. And in my world, that's kind of hard to kind of understand, but it's there, and it's there all the ability to watch and listen is there all the time at your convenience. And everybody is married to their device, as my friend Bill O'Reilly calls it. And so it makes sense. So I think
mainstream media hates this though, because
it's destroying them.
Well, because it used to be too that for Saturday Night Live, if you wanted to watch Saturday Night Live,
you have to do it at that time.
You had to turn in on Saturday night, and you had to be live in order to see it, and then you would missed it, and you didn't get to see it all week.
The technology world that we live in has become so distinct enough that people don't have to worry about a time slot. They can just turn on their device, turn on their computer, and watch it at their convenience.
Yeah,
and listen, and well, it's
right. And the reason why this is a news story and why we're talking about it right now is because I was reading this article over in the Atlantic, and the title of the piece was "The Influencer Economy is Warping the American Dream," and the subheading was that social media influencing is both an alternative to traditional American capitalism and an embodiment of it. Edie, I'll tell you this. I watched this video the other day of somebody who talked about why she's never going to work again. She's never going back to work. Not that she's not going to work, that she's never going to have a traditional job ever again. That's probably going to be me. So same thing. One, because I can't, because I'm too vocal about my opinions, and two, because it's miserable working for somebody else these days.
I can understand that.
I understand people just got to go out there and they got to work for, to be able to get a job and get into the economy and all this stuff. But I mean, it's not, if you work in customer service, especially,
it's terrible.
Yeah. People treat you like dog crap. You're the person who actually showed up to work that day. But the thing is that we have this scenario where people still demand the same level of service and professionalism and speed that we had before the pandemic, but the labor force
is not there.
It doesn't support it.
And not only that, but it's just kind of mind-boggling that I think you're right. The folks that did the service work, they've chosen to either not to work, or they're doing what you kind of do. You're on your own.
Should try
your
and
own
influence.
Boss.
Yeah, and I mean, it's really is a dream come true if you can pull it off. Because here's the thing: if I was working at the radio, do you think that they would have allowed me to go to Japan?
No, absolutely not.
There's no way that they would have allowed me to go to take a 2-week vacation.
In that environment of here's your schedule.
Yeah.
Here's the time you're supposed to be.
You can have time off, but you can't have this much time off.
No.
There's no way they would have let me do that. And here's the thing: when Stephanie and I went to Japan, we had to walk so much up so many temple stairs and things like that to be able to do it. That we said to ourselves, if we had waited until the end of our life,
you would have been physically able to do it.
Yeah.
Trust me. Yeah.
We would not been able to pull those things off.
Yeah.
And at this point in time, the only thing that really prevents us from being able to take like certain time off or vacations or things, or one, if we can afford it, and two, if our audience will put up with it, right?
Exactly.
Because we're accountable now to the customer base, which is Chris Morrill and Doug H. and Camellia and Studio 314 and all the people. Let's see, we've got 41, 50 people watching us over on Rumble or so. So these are the people that we have to keep happy. which I kind of find to be much more admirable than the whole old school just please your boss kind of thing.
Right.
Some people appreciate like that because it doesn't have the same level of weight or responsibility.
And I'm not saying that what that segment of communication and media is wrong, but you all have moved it to a different level with your deal of being your own boss, yet you still are working because you have to set up the appointments to get all your folks that you've had on.
Oh yeah.
Or, your interesting guests and people. You have your following of the people who would want to listen to that. And
yeah. It's on Monday night. I was talking to Spike Cohen's people to get him on the show on Wednesday.
It's never that you're not doing nothing.
No. Tomorrow on Thursday, I've got Daniela Pensack.
So you have to plan ahead.
I do, but I prefer that. I like that because that's
a driven person.
Because well, here's the thing: there's a freedom in that, right? When I go home and I put together, I have a truckload, infinite amount of things of work to do. Right. But at least I can set my own schedule or my calendar. I need a doctor's appointment. I can go at 1 p.m. Right. Or I need to do something that it's just, I can understand why people don't want to be locked into that old school scenario.
9 to 5.
Yes. But the thing is that the people who are the most resistant to this are the middle management whose job it is to oversee employees and to ensure productivity. Because these middle managers, they can't figure out how to deal with remote workers and measure their productivity. And the problem is that if people can work remotely and don't need to be overseen, then there's no need for a middle manager.
That's true.
So there's going to be a pushback to that from people who are demanding a return into office, not just people who are middle managers, Edie, but also, there's some jobs that have to get done in person. I get it, right? Caleb Vanderfelt has to show up to Chemna Collision Repair today and do the work in person. Absolutely get it.
Right.
But there is a growing segment of people, or there are a growing segment of people who do not have to be physically present in order to accomplish their job. And here's the thing.
Sense.
But middle managers are not the only ones upset. Office space renters.
Oh yeah,
right? People who make their money off of leasing office space.
That's right.
And property, who are in real estate, they do not like this.
And no, because and here in our community, we have lots of empty spaces.
It's interesting too, because when you look at the polls that are done on young people, more young people want to be involved in doing this kind of work than want to be doing traditional jobs like they used to. Used to be, I wanted to be an astronaut, I wanted to be a fireman, I wanted to be this or that. Now they say, what do they want to do? They want to be a TikTok influencer. Well, here's the thing, and people are concerned about that. People are concerned that that's not necessarily that. Very, very few people actually will be successful at doing what we're doing right now. I hover on the edge of profitability myself. You know what I mean? I'm one of the lucky ones in this business. I do better than most, right? But most people do not monetize their shows, right, or have advertisers. I was looking at this survey from 2022. It said 54% of young Americans would become an influencer if given the chance. Right. And then a lot of it has to do with what they see. It looks like you're living this perfect life and all this stuff. But in reality, it's more like a duck on the pond, where above the water, the duck looks, smooth and calm.
Yes.
But under the water, what's the duck doing under the water?
Swimming for its life.
Exactly.
Struggling for life.
Yeah. A 2022 survey found that 23% of the Generation Z never expects to retire. Never expects of Generation Z. They don't expect to ever retire. 59% do not expect to own a home in their lifetime. Right?
Well, that's pretty big.
That's higher than any other generation surveyed.
Because I thought that's one of the goals of successful life is home ownership.
At some point in time, have you seen these mortgage rates? Did you see the other day the Federal Reserve has a 40-year mortgage?
Listen, in our little community here, as being a lifelong resident, and I see, and there's the real estate market, I think right now is very
fragile.
So, but if you want to sell your house, I think and the price thing has just blown my mind at some of these places that are for sale. They want $200,000 or $300,000 for a
shack. Yeah, that's true. Barney Stiles over on the live stream says this: a significant portion of the economy is supported by the assumed value of commercial real estate.
Property.
Very
yeah.
true, right? Because if you think about stock prices, a lot of the reason why stock prices are what they are is because people assume it's worth that. It's the same with real estate. The reason why the price is so high is because people assume that it's worth that price. I mean, but if one day,
But Austin, who finally determines what the price really legitimately is of something?
the buyer. So the pricing market, something's really only worth what somebody's willing to pay for it.
Okay.
At the end of the day,
So there might be a lot of people that are going to be stuck,
Mhm.
thinking they're living in a Taj Mahal,
Yeah.
and they're not going to be able to get out of it because it blows my mind.
It's kind of like the housing crisis of 2007 and 8, right?
Mhm.
Because people really had an overinflated view of value of what these houses were worth. And the reality is that something was really only worth what somebody's paid for it. You've stumbled upon one of the most interesting debates on economics, because for a long time, a big question, Edie, in economics was, how do we determine
Yeah.
the value of something?
Yeah.
For a long time, during I think it was the classical era, John Smith era, and Karl Marx had a labor theory of value. And you may have heard of that, but the idea is that something has value based on how much work was put into it. Right. So the reason his argument
becomes the communism and the Marxism.
Yes. Yeah. So their argument. So Karl Marx's argument was, the reason why gold is so expensive is because there's so much work involved in digging it up from the earth, refining it, and turning it into something that's like coins or jewelry or what have you. So that you could understand why they believed that. But Austrian economists, people like Ludwig von Mises and others, blew that theory out of the water when they said that essentially that there is no such thing as an intrinsic value. Labor theory of value is bunk. They debunked it. And they determined that the value is entirely subjective. And here's how they demonstrated that. Let's say that you were to walk out the door right now and you found a diamond on the streets of Jefferson City, a big, giant, perfect, flawless diamond. You'd be excited, right?
I think so.
Because it'd be worth a lot of money.
Yeah.
If you walked outside the door and you saw that there was a cup of water sitting out there, you wouldn't care, right?
No.
Well, it wouldn't be valuable. The diamond would be more valuable.
Yes.
Now, let's say you're in the Sahara Desert, and
The water is going to be your value.
right, what good is a diamond when you're in the Sahara Desert?
When you have
The glass of water. So value is subjective, and so at the end of the day, that real value comes out of what somebody is willing to pay for whatever it is.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and Soviet economies, the only way that they were able to set prices, because they had so much central planning and government control, the only way that they were able to determine the value of products that were created in Soviet economies was to look at capitalist economies next door and to set their prices based on what the economies next door charged. So we're really going to big brain stuff this morning.
Well, and I can throw another one into it. Is I still don't understand how communistic China has acquired how they
theft. It's intellectual property theft. So what they do is they go and they steal American and Israeli patented products, and then they create them and sell them.
And unfortunately, we have a group of it's obvious that when they have bought up farmland, that the seller, the Americans, their greed clicks in, and they don't care about who's buying them as long as they get. Am I making any sense?
Yeah, you're making sense. Yeah, continue. You're doing fine.
And so if and I think our legislature here in Missouri has debated that, trying to make it unlawful for the Chinese to come into the state of Missouri and buy up property.
It's certainly going to be a big debate. It's something that we're going to have to discuss. Maybe we'll do it a little bit more. We've got one more commercial segment to go, but before we do, gold itself has no intrinsic value. It's only worth what somebody's willing to pay for it, right? So we don't agree with the labor theory of value, but gold has value, not just because of what people are willing to pay for it, and a lot of people are willing to pay for it, because China's central bank is buying it up like crazy. Our central bank is buying it up like crazy. People who are smart are stacking it up right now because
they know the dollar is
the dollar's in trouble.
Yeah.
We have countries colluding against our dollar in order to try and collapse the value. If that happens, and if the dollar takes a massive hit based on the actions of Saudi Arabia, China, and what was it? What was the third country? Russia are colluding against it. You're going to wish that you had some gold and some silver in your toolkit, in your safe. And I recommend that you call my friends at Lear Capital today at 1-800-885-2175. That's 1-800-885-2175. Call them today. There's no obligation to buy. They're going to send you a gold and silver packet, and they'll tell you a little bit more about what they offer. My recommendation to you, though, is that you put it in a retirement account. Let's take a middle ground here and say that perhaps the U.S. economy will still remain strong throughout our lifetime. Then it'll be a good idea to take this tax advantages that you would get from having a gold-backed IRA. What that means is that you will still be able to take ownership of that gold or silver at any time if you want to. It's not some paper gold certificate. We're talking about real gold and silver in your retirement account. If you have a retirement account right now, you can actually take a portion of that and invest it in gold and silver. Call my friends over at Lear Capital today to learn more about that at 1-800-885-2175. If you have phone anxiety, visit the website, learaustin.com. That's learaustin.com. learaustin.com. Get yourself some gold and silver today for financial freedom and security in the future. I recommend highly Lear Capital at learaustin.com. I doth recommend. We'll be back with one more segment with Edie Vogel before we go and say goodbye on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Donald Trump, and I approve this message. Believe me, Austin Peterson is the best. He's got the greatest Wake Up America show I've ever seen. Whenever I tune in the mornings and watch the live stream, let me tell you, he has got the absolute best content. I love his guests. It's just a total blast to watch, and I highly endorse and recommend the Wake Up America show. It's terrific, believe me.
Step right up, ladies and gents, to learn about the coolest president yet. He's not just any old prez, he's Calvin Coolidge, and boy oh boy is he different from the rest. He was quiet as a mouse, but don't you underestimate his power. He knew how to handle money, and he didn't waste an hour. He cut taxes, lowered debt, and balanced the budget with ease. No wonder the roaring 20s brought such prosperity and peace. But don't take my word for it. Grab a copy of Calvin the Coolest President and see for yourself. It's a children's book that'll make you smile and help your little ones learn about wealth. You can find it on Amazon Kindle or get your hands on a paperback at apforlibertyshop.com. So come on down and get yourself a copy of the book that's making waves all around town. You won't regret it, so get ready to be floored because Calvin Coolidge, well, folks, he really scored.
I'm a public defender.
I am a public defender.
I'm proud to be a public defender.
80% of Americans accused of a crime will get appointed a public defender.
Everybody from a speeding ticket to capital murder.
For every dollar we spend on public defenders, we spend $3 on prosecutors.
Public defenders have to do pretty much everything on their own.
Social workers, counselors.
Investigating is another piece of it.
The average public defender holds 300 cases annually.
You never feel like there's enough time.
Public defenders have health issues all the time.
A lot of people give up and say, I can't do this work anymore.
Gideon's Promise trains, mentors, and supports public defenders.
There are a lot of people who say that they would not still be public defenders, but for Gideon's Promise.
It's fueled me to continue on in this fight.
Gideon's Promise has changed the face of public defense.
People see us as troublemakers.
Good trouble only.
We don't make it easy. It should not be easy to take away someone's liberty.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Happy Wednesday. Thanks so much for watching us today. Show's almost over. It's been a fantastic show today. Edie Vogel joining us here in studio.
Lots of informative information passed on to me, who sometimes just has to withdraw from all the news world, but you got me fired up again today to start paying attention again.
What's going on? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been fun to see too the numbers on the show today. It must be because you're here, Edie.
Yes.
We've had a big audience today. Let's give it up for Edie Vogel. I definitely think she had a lot to do with it. And over on Rumble too, rumble.com, that's that free speech alternative to YouTube. Yes. Big audience over there.
I sometimes pick up some Rumble
content
because they've got good stuff.
Oh yeah, for sure. I sometimes watch Russell Brand over there. Have you ever heard of him?
No, but
he's a comedian that does a talk show. I watch him. There's a lot of really good podcasts over on rumble.com. And Steven Crowder is on. He's on right after me, actually. So somebody, I think it was some local person, texted me yesterday and was like, Austin, can you start the show a little later? Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I can't because Steven Crowder has a way bigger audience and I don't want to get stomped.
Yeah, there you go.
I really feel like we're in a really good spot here with the Wake Up America show. So if you're all big fans of Edie Vogel, give her a big round of applause. How about that? Drop some super chats, if you will, for Edie Vogel as a gesture of gratitude for all the hard work that's been done. Edie Vogel has helped support this program as well. It's thanks to her that we were able to buy some of the important equipment up front. She made a generous donation, and the camera that you can see her on right now was bought with that. So thank you, Edie Vogel. Thank you to all of our supporters. We'd love it if you could donate a super chat over on YouTube. And if you're on Rumble, I don't think there's any way to do that. So just make sure to click like on the stream over on rumble.com. We're super grateful for you. Thank you very much as well. And Todd in Minnesota, I think there is a way for you to give bits or a Prime subscription over on Twitch. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe you've already done that. But yes, I'm asking. Oh, and don't forget too, before we go, the Ludwig von Mises bust is available at the shop over at apforlibertyshop.com. If you're a fan of economics, we love Mises to pieces.
Do they still, is his thought process still utilized pretty good?
Yeah, well, yes and no.
Okay.
So, I mean, people who believe in free markets, they still look to Ludwig von Mises as the author of free market capitalism in the modern society. He's not an anarchist, if you will, an anarcho-capitalist. Right? We've talked about that term before, but he's about it. He's like me. He's as close to an anarchist as you can get.
Without crossing over the line.
Yeah, without crossing over the line. So if you love Mises to pieces, then I've got my big Ludwig von Mises bust over there at apforlibertyshop.com.
Looks like everybody's grandpa.
He does, yes.
If you get one of those in your home, just say, oh, that's my grandpa.
Yeah, for sure.
No offense.
Yeah, Robbie Thurman just dropped $5 in the bucket. Thank you, Robbie. Appreciate that. I am but a humble merchant of freedom and talk shows.
Yeah, I think Robbie was up here one day.
Robbie Thurman, yeah.
I remember.
Yeah, you know Robbie. You got to meet him.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. For Edie, he did. Thank you, Robbie. We appreciate that very much. Edie, you were kind of surprised that at the end of the show already.
Yeah, it went by fast.
It did go by fast. Thank you very much for hanging out with us today.
Welcome. It was fun.
Grateful. We had a good.
Me again. I'll be more than happy to shoot the breeze with you.
If you're just tuning in and you're like, darn, the show's already over, go back and watch it. We had great interviews. Spike Cohen was on the show earlier today. We talked to him.
The judge never lets you down.
Judge Napolitano absolutely killed it earlier on the show today. Great man of wisdom. Thank you very much for tuning into the program today. We appreciate you. Don't forget to support our sponsors. Check out apforlibertyshop.com. There's so much more than just Ludwig von Mises busts. We've got all kinds of cool products over there as well. I only have a few of those Mises busts ready to ship. So if you do want one, get one today, because I'm pretty sure they will sell out fast, because we're going to send out an email and let people know that they're ready to roll. And I will have a smaller version out very soon. All right. Thanks, Edie. Have a good day. Yeah. See you all tomorrow morning on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
I like shooting things, but whenever I can't shoot something, I like to cut things. My life isn't all about shooting and stabbing and cutting, though. Sometimes I have to do actual work, but when I work, I still like to have fun. And there's nothing less fun than trying to cut with a crappy knife. Thankfully, from the ancient sect of Christian knights, who also loved cutting and stabbing, comes a new implement that has received my personal blessing, the Templar knife. Like the ancient sword of Excalibur, you don't choose a Templar knife, it chooses you. You just decide what kind you want on the website first, however, and then order it online, and then it chooses you. The Templar knife comes in a variety of shapes. As a man of culture and taste, I have decided I will never use a terrible knife again. And thanks to the inspiration provided by this excellent product, I have decided to launch a new crusade against anyone using less than superior knives. Join me, brothers and sisters, by visiting uppercuttactical.com/pages/Templar-knives. That's a lot of slashes. For that, you'll need a Templar knife. For 10% off, use code AP for Liberty and join me in a quest for glory, for liberty, for Christendom, for the Templar knife. Get yours today. Fire.
Hello, this is Barack Obama, and let me tell you why Austin Peterson stinks, and you should never pay attention to anything that he has to say. First of all, he's a libertarian, and we all know libertarians are idiots. They don't realize how important government is to everything that we do. I recently became aware that Austin has opened up a libertarian shop at apeforlibertyshop.com. Now, I'm asking you as a personal favor to me that you never ever visit apeforlibertyshop.com. With all of the great Liberty merchandise there, the last thing that we need to do is to get people spreading this message around the country, because then they might start thinking that they don't need government. And that's the last thing that good Democrats like us want. So if you love democracy, like me, and hate freedom, then don't visit AP for Liberty Shop. Like I said, whatever you do, do not visit aporlibertyshop.com. I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
It is better to settle these matters in the courts than on the streets, and new laws are needed at every level. But law alone cannot make men see right.